The Illinois primaries are coming up in a couple of weeks, and we are very fortunate to have our next guest. He was a legislator in both the Illinois House and the Senate, and he is currently the mayor of Evanston. He is now vying to represent Illinois' 9th District in Congress. Mayor Daniel Biss, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for all that you have done for the folks of Illinois throughout your career in public service. And I personally want to thank you for sponsoring legislation banning the gay panic defense. It was a bill that passed unanimously. The fact that it was still on the books in, I believe it was 2017 when it got passed, is shocking. So thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. You know, when folks at Equality Illinois came to me to talk about that issue, I had the same reaction you had. Like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
That's, you know, in the case your listeners don't know, this is a so-called defense where if somebody finds out that someone is, you know,
a member of the LGBTQ community,
or has any let's say has any kind of non-cisgender identity, and then is so shocked, so disgusted by this revelation that they fly into a rage of violence and commit assault or even murder, then they might be able to go to court and say, well, it wasn't really my fault. I couldn't control myself. I was
in a gay panic.
Horrified.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, I was in a gay panic. Literally, it's called a panic defense.
Yeah.
So, you know, until we passed that law, I want to say it was 2016, but I don't remember for sure.
I think 2016 is when it passed, and then 2017 is when it went into law, into effect. Yeah. But I mean,
then you could still go to court and defend yourself in that way. It's the most obscene thing.
It was very obscene, and I'm so happy that, thank you for leading the charge on that as well. You know, you have had such a career in public service, and I ask this of all the candidates that are running, just why are you running for Congress?
Well, the tragedy is we have such an emergency in our federal government. You know, from issue to issue, we're watching people get shot in the street, federal agents marauding around our communities, grabbing people and kidnapping them because of the color of their skin or the language that they're speaking. But of course, it doesn't end there. I mean, you know, for this show, we should just point out that trans kids in particular are under attack or being assaulted by our government. And we could go on and on. And so it just feels to me that we're in this emergency time and we need the right people there to fight back. And what I think that means is people who know how to fight and win inside of government, right? People who've gotten tough things done against strong opposition, even when it's politically hard for them in a government role, and people who are out on the street, putting their body on the line and motivating a resistance movement across the country to rise up and demand something different, because I think we can't end this nightmare without both of those things working hand in hand.
Indeed. What are your top three, would you say, Mayor Biss, top three priorities if you're elected to Congress?
Well, look, the tragedy is when I take office in January of 2027, Donald Trump's going to still be the president for 2 more years. And so in that time, it's really about stopping the madness, about protecting our people, about pushing back against ICE, about pushing back against the assaults on our democracy and against LGBT people and against people of color. I mean, the fundamental job for the first couple of years is going to be to stop them in their tracks. Now, going forward, you know, in a future world where we're able to actually work together on solving problems, I would say climate, economic security, and corruption. And I say corruption, you know, it's not something people necessarily always bring up, but I look at our government as just stuck. I think we're in a situation where things are not getting done, where it's just easier for everybody in politics to say no rather than yes, where big money and powerful corporate interests have so much control over what can and can't happen. And if we don't tackle that, I don't think we're going to have a government that's got the tools to solve any other problems.
So what do you think? Because I know part of your campaign, you were talking like affordability right now is at the fore of most people's minds. I said earlier I went and I bought 2 frozen pizzas and some toilet paper. It was $35. That's ridiculous. But I love that one of the parts of your platform is you were really wanting to combat income inequality and wealth hoarding, which is happening because of tax cuts, which is happening because of all sorts of things. How do you plan to combat these two things that kind of go hand in hand?
Well, I'll start by talking about some specific ideas, right? First of all, you talked about taxes. It's absolutely true. I mean, we basically have allowed more and more wealth to get in the hands of fewer and fewer people, and then it goes untaxed. And so that means not only raising the top marginal income tax rate, it means closing tax loopholes like the Wall Street loopholes, like the carried interest loophole that allows some of the richest people in the history of the world to legally kind of misclassify their income and get a big tax cut. We ought to have a wealth tax. People with, huge stores of wealth ought to have that tax as well, so that we're not allowing this kind of growing oligarchy to take hold. We ought to raise the minimum wage significantly and then index it to inflation. So these are all concrete things that I think need to be done immediately. But I also want to just for one quick second step back and ask the question of how did we get here, right? How is it that we're such a wealthy country and yet got people, not just 5 or 10%, but 50, 70% who are struggling to afford housing, who can't afford childcare or can't afford to have a child because of the cost of childcare and the barbaric family leave policies, can't have access to health care. How did we get here? And I think there's really an answer to that, which is we have spent 50 years watching the biggest corporations merge and consolidate and grow. So they have near monopoly power now across the economy as workers have lost their power, right? Unions have shrunk and become less influential in the labor market and in the political system. And so we've just watched as the dial of power has shifted from workers to corporations, from consumers to corporations, and the outcome is what you would expect. And if you want to solve the problem, you've got to actually get at the core. So that means breaking up the big monopolies, enforcing our antitrust laws. It means lifting up labor unions, building a labor movement for the 21st century, passing bills like the PRO Act that would make it easier for workers to build power in the workplace and actually be the narrators of their own story, not just be at the mercy of somebody else's whims.
Yeah, well, I think it's also because there's nothing a billionaire fears more than becoming a 100-millionaire.
Yeah, and when you want to do and I appreciate that we need to do this, but when we have a compromised Justice Department like we have, even if you take office in 2027, how do you cut through that?
Well, the Justice Department, the whole federal government, the whole executive branch of government is being taken over by an authoritarian maniac.
Right, exactly.
So part of that is just, that's bad, but that's not a good enough attitude. The other part of this is that, listen, we have watched Congress let it happen. We have watched Congress step back from their constitutional responsibility. We've watched Congress leave a power vacuum that the president is only too happy to fill. And so I think that we need to take seriously Congress's oversight responsibility. When the Democratic majority comes into office next January, there are going to be impeachments that have to happen. There are going to be hearings that have to happen. There are going to be subpoenas that have to be given. We have to actually take our job seriously because part of what they're doing because Congress is lying down and let it happen. And I'm just never going to be like that.
Yeah. Thank you, because that is a huge thing. We need to get the legislative branch back to being a co-equal branch of government and holding the executive and judicial, be a primary check on those two things, especially when it comes to this whole presidential immunity that the Supreme Court has set up for ding dong.
Do you think term limits are the answer to some of these even Democrats? As we know, there's a lot of criticism about Democrats, like you're saying, they're not doing enough. Are term limits a way to? Are the people too comfortable in their power, or what are we going to do to change this going forward?
We definitely need more turnover. I think term limits for the Supreme Court are extremely important. To talk about, you've got this lifetime appointment where these guys are basically tearing apart democracy, and they're going to stay there until they're no longer alive. I also think there's other aspects of this, right? So our campaign finance system is so corrupt.
Yep.
It's so broken. It advantages incumbents so much. And I hate to tell you, but the way we draw our political maps also advantages our incumbents. So if you create a campaign finance reform system like what I've set up for mayor's elections in Evanston, if you have a fair mapping system, then all of a sudden you're going to have competition. There's not going to be a automatic path to reelection forever. And then you're going to have more turnover and more fresh blood and more dynamism and vitality in our political system.
We need that. Oh.
Yeah, campaign finance reform is a huge thing that I've been talking about for years.
Oh, yeah, because the ones with the money, you were trying to, the oligarchy situation we have, it's like it's a vicious circle because they're the ones controlling the money that funds all these campaigns. And as we know, the one that screams the loudest sometimes gets their message across, and it's not.
That's right.
It's not right. So more power
we're
to
seeing
you.
it in this campaign, right? It's we've got I'm the only candidate kind of in the leading tier who gets my money from people in Illinois. The other candidates are all just overwhelmingly funded by out-of-state interests, and that's legal. They're not breaking the law, but I just feel like that's not how we ought to have our elections
I
run.
agree.
All right. Well, Mayor Biss, thank you so much for taking time out to join us today. If you want to find out more information about the mayor's platform issues, his career, go to danielbiss.com. Mayor Daniel Biss, again, thank you for joining us today, and best of luck to you as you head towards the primaries.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate everything you guys do.